What's going on, Middle School Sunday? Hey, my name is Sam Canchola.
Hi, Sam.
And today I want to start off with a question for you. Have you ever felt super unqualified to do something? Like cooking dinner for the family?
Nobody cooks.
Or being captain of the football team?
Captain of the football team.
Or taking on a solo act and dance? I remember there was a time in middle school when my parents, they let me use their brand new camcorder to let me record our family trip. And I was, and still am, a techie, but I remember thinking about how cool it was to use this new device. But I also remember how nervous I was to actually be responsible for it. You know what I mean? Like, it was fun to hold on to it for a moment, but I had this fear of being the one who was going to drop this brand new $1,000 camera.
Think very carefully, son.
And then just as I had that thought, sure enough, I actually remember dropping a bottle, or it was something that I dropped. And so it just enabled this fear of doing the same thing with this $1,000 camera. And suddenly, in that moment, I felt like I was, without a doubt, the wrong person to be holding this camera. And my parents, you see, they believed in me, but suddenly I felt unqualified to capture all the family memories for this trip. Now maybe you've felt like this before. An incredibly difficult task that you have zero understanding or experience in, and you feel like you're just in over your head. Now, let me ask you another question, but related to your faith. Do you ever feel spiritually unqualified? Like the feeling sometimes that God is leading you to do something that is way out of your comfort zone or level of expertise? If you do, I get it. I mean, it's easy to get discouraged and feel powerless, but I believe that Scripture has something for you this morning to encourage you to be more than you ever thought you were capable of. To get us started, I want us to turn to our anchor scripture for the next 3 weeks, and it comes from the Apostle Paul in 1 Timothy 4:12. It's the Apostle Paul is telling a young pastor named Timothy, saying, "Don't let anyone look down on you because you are young, but set an example for the believers in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity." Don't think less of yourself simply because you're young. That phrase is going to carry with us the next couple Sundays. Don't let anyone look down on you because you are young. And this is especially true if you've ever felt unqualified to do something, which is why I want us to spend the next few minutes going through a story in John chapter 6, verses 1 through 14. This story shows us how a key player in one of Jesus's most well-known miracles wasn't this dude that had a ton of experience in the kitchen. He wasn't a well-spoken high school graduate. He was a young boy. So let's check it out. It says in verse 1, sometime after this, Jesus crossed to the far shore of the Sea of Galilee, that is the Sea of Tiberias, and a great crowd of people followed him because they saw the signs he had performed by healing the sick. Then Jesus went up on a mountainside and sat down with his disciples. And the Jewish Passover festival was near. When Jesus looked up and saw a great crowd coming toward him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" Now Jesus, asked this only to test him, for Jesus already had in mind what he was going to do. And so Philip, he answered him, he said, "It would take more than a half year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have a bite." And another disciple, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up and said, this is our key verse right here. He said, "Here is a boy." Come on, everybody say it with me. Here is a boy. Let's try that one more time. I know we need to do it again. Everybody say it with me. Here is a boy. Cool. All right, let's keep going. Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will they go among so many? Jesus said, "Have the people sit down." There was plenty of grass in that place, and they sat down. About 5,000 men were there. And Jesus then took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. And when they all had enough to eat, he said to his disciples, "Gather the pieces that are all left over. Let nothing be wasted." And so they gathered them, filled 12 baskets with the pieces of the 5 barley loaves left over by those who had eaten. And after the people saw the sign Jesus performed, they began to say, "Surely, surely, surely," very important word, "surely this is the prophet who is to come into the world." This miracle with the fish and the loaves is what shifted the hearts of so many to see that Jesus was the real deal. But this miracle wouldn't have happened, and it would have been possible if it wasn't for our young boy. You see, the young boy was near Jesus, and he was also available to do what Jesus said. And if we're honest with ourselves, I think it's safe to say that many of us fall into the trap of focusing on our age. We ask, how could God use someone like me? Well, Scripture shows us that God is less interested in our age and our outward appearance. He is looking, though, for a heart of obedience. When the young boy brought what he had, Jesus used it miraculously. And he wasn't concerned, like the disciples, with the amount of food he had. He simply gave Jesus what he had, and Jesus did the rest. And that's because when we shift our focus from our limitations to God's ability, he uses us in ways we never could have imagined. So here's the bottom line. You are not too young to be used by God. In fact, the next time God asks us to do something he's calling us to do, and you find yourself wondering, how am I gonna do this? I want you to rise up to a response similar to the way Isaiah responded to God in Isaiah chapter 6, verse 8. It says, "I heard the voice of the Lord saying, 'Whom shall I send? And who will go for us?' And I said, 'Here am I, send me.'" Send me, not anyone else. Send me. Choose me, because I want to do it. I may be young, but I'm equipped. I may not feel super confident, but I'm confident in God. It might not be done to perfection, but my God is asking me to do this, so I'm going to do it too. We often let fear, discouragement, intimidation, or a dozen other things keep us from being willing and available to go where God sends us. But this morning, our next step is to simply etch these words into our daily prayer life. "Here I am, Lord, send me." And when we daily surrender in prayer to wherever God is calling us, we make ourselves ready and available like that young boy with his lunch. But this week, here's what I want you to do. Don't let anyone look down on you. Be available for God to send you, and take courage and say, "Here I am, Lord, send me." And as you do this, keep an eye out for what God does in and around you. I love you, Radiant Youth. I'll see you next week.